on layer here, you know, it's barely starting to tack up, to get tacky. So I have to paint with a creamier and creamier consistency to the paint, or it won't go on, and the liquid helps with that as well. You know, otherwise it'll just take paint off rather than putting paint down. And again, it's easier for me to build up from light to dark in these layers because I'm discovering that surface as I go, rather than, you know, having a model in front of me saying, oh, well, there's my lightest light, I'm just going to put it down, here's my next lightest, and here's my darkest dark, and jumping around, because I already have it plotted out. I'm, you know, I'm forced to sort of feel through it. Plus, I'm always happier with the result when I go from a dark to a light. I don't typically, you know, start this dark, but I will push, I'll start from an 80% up, at least in my darks. 80% dark, sorry. So a 20% value. Hard part about painting on a table like this is I can't step back, step away from it. So I get kind of lost in the details more than I would, say, if I was doing this digitally and had the monitor far away from me, or could zoom out, or could stand back from the easel. So I can see here some craziness. This is one of those silicone brushes, or silicone. It's just a rubber tip, and I'm using it here to cut back into the wet paint, basically erase or sharpen some edges that I felt maybe I ate into too much. So I'm trying to get a sharp line right at the those muscle attachment points there that come into the upper lip, at least where the cast shadow part of it is before the plane changes or turns. So I'm using it like an eraser, but it's erasing to dark rather than light. That's about all I found that stuff good for. So I'm starting to here blend a tiny bit, or rather soften some of the shapes that I've put down. I didn't give much care to that before, because it's the wrong time for it, unless I can do it as I put the paint down. And I really don't like soft paintings. You know, I don't like that airbrush feel, so I tend to keep more hard edge than lose it, but not to the point where I find it's distracting. So I'm trying to make decisions now about designing the surface, designing my hard edges, my soft edges, both to turn the form because of how light works, and also just to make a pleasing, you know, sort of an appealing overall shape to the patterns of light and dark. Here's what I see, like, you know, being too close. I made the nose, it's too contrasty, like it doesn't feel like it fits. So I'm filling in larger shapes again. It's too contrasty, essentially. I'm losing the greater form of the head, of how the, you know, the head as a whole is working. I think I do that in some other places here too. Fill in. I'm still defining planes here, but in a softer manner. Here, erasing out again. That's a great part about having a sealed ground, is you can always go back, and with oil or alkyds. So I'm going back in with dark here. Just because you start on a dark ground doesn't mean, and you're building up to light, doesn't mean that you're not going back and forth all the time between light and dark, painting up and painting down. But you have to keep track of, like, when you add white to a color, it cools it off a lot, and the ground here is going to be super warm just because it's got no white in it other than what's transmitting through it. So you get this effect where your shadows are warm and your lights are cool, which on skin, you know, works out okay with a generic light source. But as soon as you add a dark into, like, the corner of the mouth there, it's mixing with the color that's on there already, and so it's cooled off a lot, and it tends to have a really different feel to it and not work as well as a shadow. I think I was saying there, I was talking while I was doing this, but it was just complete gibberish, so that's why I'm doing it again. So I was saying that, like, I was losing that surface of the cylinder feel to the whole head, and I was trying to look for ways to get that back. The telltale of that is, you know, too much contrast, typically. It's me trying to get a decent shape on that brush, which is terrible. Don't buy cheap brushes. They're good for about one session. So now I can go in with some of my darker darks on the cast shadows and accent areas. Leaving some of that really lighter and warmer stuff from the surface of the board to work as reflected light. Like under the chin, around the eyes, and under the nose. So I'm not really sure if I addressed really any of the questions that